Hello and welcome back once again to the Single Malt Review. I'm Tim, thank you very much for joining me. Those of you who followed the channel will have noticed that a little while ago I reviewed both the 12 and the 18-year-old expressions of Glenfiddich, much to the chagrin of fans of the 15, and fair enough. The 15 is a wildly popular version of Glenfiddich, so I should really go back and see to that one, which I'm going to do today. So, the Glenfiddich 15, what is it beyond 15-year-old Glenfiddich? It's best described, I suppose, in how it's quite a bit different from the other editions of Glenfiddich. It describes itself as this unique Solera reserve, which is a bit pointless, actually. That doesn't mean nearly as much as it might otherwise, was this not Scotch whisky. Solera systems, Solera I should say, that's how a lot of rum and brandy and so forth is matured, and it's a very different and very more, it's less sort of one-to-one, you know, you never know how old something is really if it's come out of a Solera system. It's a bit more wishy-washy. This has not been aged in a Solera system. It wouldn't be legal. You couldn't put a name or a number on it for an age statement if it had been aged thusly. What they really mean by this Solera system is that they have taken the components of which this whisky is produced, and they are all 15 years old at the time of blending, and they've sort of tipped them into this big vat and let them marry for a little while, and they fill their bottles of 15 from that big vat. And that's not too uncommon whatsoever. A great many whiskies are blended and married for a little while, and almost all single malts are blended from various casks. So don't bother yourself too much thinking about the how Solera applies to this one. But I said different components, and there is one different component in here which makes a big difference, I think, which the other Glenfiddichs do not have, and that's fresh oak. This is made up of three things: bourbon matured whisky, sherry matured whisky, and fresh oak matured whisky. All 15 years old, obviously, but the fresh oak, that really takes on a huge amount of sort of sweetness, freshness, body, and that's how I kind of describe the 15 years old. Whereas the 12 and 18 are quite delicate, quite poised, quite careful whiskies. That's sort of how I view Glenfiddich, really, as sort of one of the more fragile, delicate, soft-spoken Speyside whiskies. The 15 is a wee bit different. It is full-bodied, it's rich, it's fruity. Well, it's darker, but don't worry about that because it's coloured. So whether that's the increased sherry, which I suspect it is a little bit, or all the way down to that fresh oak, which I suspect it also is, we don't really know. But it's a very different whisky, very sort of flavour-forward, full-bodied, robust whisky. On the nose. Sweet, immediately. Sweet and juicy. There is a lot of fruit in the other expressions, especially the 12-year-old, but this is, it's a very different fruit. We're dealing with sort of red fruit now, whereas the 12 deals mainly in green fruit, apples, pears. Now we have orange citrus, we have stone fruit, nectarine, all kinds of really ripe, sort of lush, juicy fruits. And it's a very sweet nose as well. Not overtly oaky at all. There's quite a lot of vanilla in there, a wee bit of marzipan ice cream, but icing, I should say, not ice cream. I don't think there even is such a thing. Yeah, it's very rich, very fruity, very forward with its flavours. Quite up front. And it really follows through in the palate. That red fruit, that sweet vanilla, it just explodes, sort of forward to mid palate, really hits you there. And it's not in any way, there's no subtlety here. It's not a subtle whisky. If anything, it's sort of got more of a highland character. I'd almost relate this to something like an Aberlour, a much more sort of punchy, forward whisky than you'd expect from Glenlivet. wait, Glenfiddich. Here we are, almost lost it. Glenfiddich. There's honey as well. Fresh, sort of lush honeycomb. It really is a very, very sort of Moorish style of whiskey. I won't put water in because at 40% it neither needs it nor wants it. I think it could go to pieces pretty fast if it got any lower than it is now. But it is pretty jolly scrummy, and scrummy in a kind of a different way to its peers. As for whether you would prefer this to the other, I think this is almost, you could almost describe this as more of a bourbon drinker's Glenfiddich, I suppose. Because bourbon being quite, without making any Americans angry, quite sort of, it's very forward, very loud, very primary in its flavours. You know, it doesn't muck around, it doesn't hide too many subtleties behind the curtain. It's not a delicate drink at all, and that's fine, that's what bourbon does. This, quite akin to that sort of thing. Not that it tastes like bourbon, not in the least, but I think it has the same sort of attitude towards its flavour. And similar people may enjoy it. As for scores, I think this is, and this shows how much personal preference goes into individual reviewers' scores, and that's why you should probably never trust them, unless you know the reviewer very, very well. So you can always trust me. This one is less my kind of style of whiskey than the other Glenfiddichs. This one, for me, just sort of strays a little bit outside of the boundary of what I really associate with and what I come to Glenfiddich for. So, to me, it's not quite as strong as the 12-year-old, which I gave I think deserved, 89. This one I have to dial back a little wee bit. This one is an 87. It's a very, very good Scotch whisky, and for people that enjoy that sort of juicy honey sweet highland style, I think they're really, really going to like it. It may well be their favourite one in the range, as it is a great many people's favourite one in the range. If you ask a lot of people, they will say that Glenfiddich 15, that's where to hit it. That's where it's the sort of price quality then comes together, and because you're not paying a great deal. This is one of the cheaper 15-year-olds on the market. Not that there's a great many. It's certainly way, way less than the 18. So yeah, it has its audience, it's just not me. So yeah, 87 for that one. I absolutely respect the whiskey. It's just I would probably pick either of the other two from the range if I was looking for my own sort of Glenfiddich experience, I suppose. So, I hope that was useful. I hope that sort of filled the void. Don't ask me to review anything older than 18, because there goes unaffordability for me, I'm afraid. But I will check back in with Glenfiddich, because I know they do a distillery or Malt Masters edition. I forget exactly what they call it or what the deal is there, but there are a few. The complaint I've always had with Glenfiddich is that they do nothing but produce chill-filtered, coloured 40% whiskey, which, you know, whatever, people buy it, so they might as well. They'll get more into the bottle. But they are now they've got their IPA cask, and they're doing their sort of whiskey personality collab versions. I forget exactly what that one's called, but it is actually pretty good, the one I tried. And those are sort of a realer version of Glenfiddich, which I find quite interesting. So I will attempt to get some of those in front of the camera if I can get my hands on them. But for the meantime, I hope this sort of fills the void that I left you all with between the 12 and the 18. And I will be back, hopefully with Dave, who is sadly sick this weekend, but never mind, it is the winter over here, so we're dealing with a few sniffles. He didn't drink enough whiskey, there's the problem, so he may fortified against any viral attack here. So, before I go further down the hole, this has been the Single Malt Review. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll be back very, very, very soon, and as I said, so will Dave. Slanger, join us then.